An arrogant manager slapped an elderly waitress in front of 40 customers. Phones captured everything. The video went viral by midnight, reaching someone 300 miles away. What the manager didn't know: the waitress had a son who was a mafia boss, and he was about to remind everyone that some mothers have very dangerous children. The crystal glass shattered before Rosa Moretti even realized it had slipped from her fingers. For a moment, the entire dining room of Restaurant Regalia seemed to freeze. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward the sound. The expensive Bordeaux spread across the marble floor like spilled blood, glass shards glittering under the chandelier light. Rosa's arthritic wrist throbbed. She'd felt it give out, that sharp, burning sensation that came more frequently these days. At 68, her body was betraying her one joint at a time. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, already bending down with a cloth. "I'll clean this immediately." "You clumsy old fool." Derek Garrison's voice cut through the restaurant like a whip. The assistant manager was 29, sharp-suited, and had been looking for a reason to humiliate her for weeks. His polished shoes clicked against the floor as he stormed across the dining room, his face red with theatrical rage. Rosa kept her head down, her knees protesting as she knelt. "It was an accident, Mr. Garrison. My hand." "Your hand? Your hand?" Derek's voice rose loud enough for every table to hear. "That's a $70 bottle. Do you know how many mistakes you've made this month? Do you?" Other waitstaff had stopped moving. In the corner booth, a teenage girl slowly raised her phone. At table 7, a businessman did the same. Nobody intervened. They just watched and recorded. "I'll pay for it," Rosa said softly, though she knew it would take nearly a full day's wages. "Please, I'll." The slap came without warning. Derek's palm connected with Rosa's cheek with a crack that echoed through the restaurant. Her head snapped to the side. She stumbled, catching herself against a chair, one hand pressed to her face. The room spun for a moment. Complete silence. Rosa's cheek burned. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of everyone. She'd survived too much in her life: an abusive first marriage, poverty, raising a son alone in a dangerous neighborhood, to cry over a spoiled boy with a manager's badge. But the humiliation cut deeper than the pain. "Get out," Derek hissed, his face now pale as he seemed to realize what he'd done. But his pride wouldn't let him back down, not with everyone watching. "You're fired. Clear out your locker and get out of my restaurant." "Derek." Maria, one of the younger waitresses, gasped. "You can't just." "I can do whatever I want." Derek spun toward her. "Anyone else want to defend this useless old woman? Anyone?" No one spoke. Fear was a powerful silencer. Rosa straightened slowly, her dignity intact even as her cheek continued to throb. She untied her apron with steady hands, folded it carefully, and placed it on the nearest table. Her movements were precise, almost ceremonial. "I quit," she said quietly, meeting Derek's eyes. "You didn't need to fire me." She walked toward the back, her head high, refusing to rush. Behind her, the restaurant remained eerily quiet. Only the soft click, click, click of phone cameras broke the silence. Rosa didn't know it yet, but 12 phones had captured the moment. Within the hour, the video would be uploaded to 6 different social media platforms. By midnight, it would have 40,000 views. By morning, it would reach someone Derek Garrison should have feared more than anyone else in the world. In the staff room, Rosa's hands finally shook as she opened her locker. 23 years. She'd worked at Regalia for 23 years, back when it was a small family restaurant, before the corporate buyout, before people like Derek. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter-in-law, Lucia. "Are you okay? Leo says you sounded tired this morning." Rosa typed back slowly. "Fine. Just a long shift. Love to Leo." She wouldn't tell them. Not about the slap, not about being fired. Her family worried enough already. Her son had his own complicated life, one he deliberately kept separate from hers for her own protection. She understood why, even if it meant seeing him only twice a year. Rosa gathered her few possessions, a spare sweater, worn sneakers, a photograph of her grandson Leo at his 8th birthday party. She took one last look at the locker that had been hers for over 2 decades, then closed it for the final time. Outside, the November air bit at her flushed cheek. She pulled her thin coat tighter and began the walk to the bus stop, her wrists still aching, her face still burning. She didn't notice the black sedan that slowed as it passed her. She didn't see the driver make a phone call. And she didn't know that 300 miles away, in a mansion surrounded by armed guards, her grandson Leo had just seen the video that was spreading like wildfire across the internet. The 13-year-old stared at his phone screen, watching his beloved grandmother, his nana, get slapped by a man in a suit. He watched her stumble. He watched her refuse to cry. Leo's hands trembled with rage he was too young to fully process. He looked toward his father's study, where Matteo De Luca, a man the underworld whispered about in terrified reverence, was reviewing financial reports, believing his carefully separated worlds would never collide. Leo made a decision that would change everything. He forwarded the video with a single message, "Dad, this is Nana. Today." Then he pressed send. The storm was coming. Derek Garrison just didn't know it yet. Rose's apartment was small, tucked away on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator hadn't worked in 6 years. Her knees screamed with each step, but she climbed in silence, one hand gripping the railing, the other pressed gently against her swollen cheek. Inside, she locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to exhale. The bruise was already forming. She could see it in the hallway mirror, a dark purple shadow spreading across her weathered cheek like spilled ink. Her wrist had swollen too, the joint hot and angry. She should go to the hospital. She knew that. But hospital visits meant questions, reports, insurance calls she couldn't afford. And what would she say? That she'd been slapped at work? That she was now unemployed with rent due in 12 days? No. She'd ice it. Take some aspirin. It would heal. Everything always healed eventually. Rosa filled a plastic bag with ice cubes, wrapped it in a kitchen towel, and pressed it against her face. The cold bit into her skin, but it was a relief. She sat at her small kitchen table, the same one where she'd helped Leo with homework during his summer visits, where she'd taught him to make her mother's pasta sauce, where she'd told him stories about his grandfather. The good man who died before Leo was born. Not his father. Never his father. Matteo had made that rule clear years ago. Leo knows I love him, but he can never know what I do. He can never be part of this life. Rosa had agreed. She'd seen what that life did to people. Her phone buzzed. Lucia again. Mom, are you sure you're okay? Leo keeps asking about you. Rosa typed back, tell my sweet boy I'm perfect. Just tired. We'll call tomorrow. She set the phone down and closed her eyes, letting the ice numb more than just her cheek. 300 miles away, Leo De Luca sat on his bed, staring at his phone. His father hadn't responded yet. Maybe he was in a meeting. Maybe he hadn't seen it. Maybe. The bedroom door opened. Leo jumped, shoving his phone under his pillow. Matteo De Luca stood in the doorway, and Leo's heart stopped. His father was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with dark hair graying at the temples and eyes that could shift from warm to terrifying in a heartbeat. Right now, those eyes were unreadable. Leo, his voice was calm. Too calm. Come with me. Leo's mouth went dry. Dad, Now. They walked in silence to Matteo's study, a room Leo was rarely allowed to enter. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that looked like it belonged to a king. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. Matteo walked to his desk and picked up his phone. The video was paused on the screen. Frozen on the moment of impact, Rosa's head turned, Derek's hand still raised. How long have you known? Matteo asked quietly. I just saw it an hour ago, Leo said quickly. It's everywhere online. Dad, that man hit Nana. He hit her. I know what he did. Matteo's voice was steel wrapped in silk. What I'm asking is why you thought sending this to me was a good idea. Leo blinked. Because she's your mom. Because someone hurt her. And what did you think I would do, Leo? The question hung in the air. Leo suddenly understood he'd opened a door that was never supposed to open. I thought you'd help her, Leo whispered. Mateo set the phone down carefully, then sat in his leather chair.
For a long moment, he said nothing.
When he finally spoke, his voice was different, tired, almost sad. Your grandmother and I have an arrangement. I stay away from her life, and she stays safe. Do you understand? The distance between us isn't because I don't love her. It's because I love her. But she got hurt anyway, Leo said, his voice cracking. And she won't tell anyone. I know her, she'll just take it. Mateo's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists on the desk. She quit, Leo added, pulling up another post on his phone. Someone from the restaurant posted about it. She just walked out.
Dad, she needs that job.
Mateo closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, he saw his mother's face, not from the video, but from memory, teaching him to tie his shoes, working 3 jobs to keep him fed, crying when he told her he was leaving to work for the Colombo family, begging him to find another way. He'd promised her once that he'd never bring his world to her doorstep, but someone else had brought violence to her instead. When Mateo opened his eyes, they were cold and dark as a winter sea. Go to your room, Leo. Dad. Go. Leo left, closing the door softly behind him. Alone, Mateo picked up his phone and replayed the video.
Once. Twice.
3 times. Each viewing stoked a fire that had been carefully controlled for years. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Yes, sir, came an immediate response. Vincent. My office.
Now.
Mateo leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled, his mind already calculating. Derek Garrison had made the worst mistake of his life. He just didn't know he was already a dead man walking. Vincent Caruso had worked for Mateo DeLuca for 15 years. In that time, he'd seen his boss angry exactly 4 times. Each time, someone had ended up in a hospital. Or worse. When he entered the study and saw Mateo's face, he knew this would be the 5th. Close the door, Mateo said quietly. Vincent did, then stood at attention, his hand instinctively moving away from his waistband. Even his own men made Mateo nervous when he looked like this. Do you know who this is? Mateo turned his laptop around, showing a freeze frame from the video. Derek Garrison mid-slap, his face twisted with rage. No, sir. His name is Derek Garrison, assistant manager at a restaurant called Regalia in the city. 29 years old, Mateo's voice was eerily calm, each word precisely measured. 4 hours ago, he struck my mother in front of 40 witnesses. Then he fired her. Vincent's eyes widened. In 15 years, Mateo had never mentioned his mother. Most of the organization didn't even know she existed. That was intentional. Protection through obscurity.
Jesus Christ, Vincent Briated.
I want everything. Mateo stood, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. I want to know where he lives, where he banks, who he fucks, what he eats for breakfast. I want his life story from birth to this morning. Every person he's connected to, every dollar he's touched, every secret he thinks is buried. Considered done. That's phase 1. Mateo walked to the window overlooking his estate. 20 acres of manicured grounds, high walls, armed patrols. A fortress built to keep his world separate from the real one. Phase 2, the restaurant. Ownership structure, investors, staff, everything. Someone enabled this piece of shit to think he could put his hands on an elderly woman. I want to know who. Vincent pulled out his phone, already texting instructions to their research team. Timeline. 24 hours for the basic profile. 72 for the deep dive. Mateo turned, his face half-shadowed. And Vincent? Total discretion. No one moves, no one breathes near this man until I say so. Understood. Understood. One more thing. Mateo's voice dropped even lower. My mother can never know I'm involved. Not until it's over. Vincent nodded and left quickly, already making calls before he reached the hallway. Alone again, Mateo returned to his desk and opened the video one more time. He forced himself to watch his mother's humiliation, to see her stumble, to witness her quiet dignity as she removed her apron. Rosa Moretti had survived things that would have broken most people. She'd fled an abusive marriage with nothing but the clothes on her back and a 3-year-old son. She'd worked herself to exhaustion in factories, restaurants, cleaning offices at night so Matteo could eat. She'd never asked for help, never complained, never broke. And the one time he'd tried to give her something, a house, a car, money, she'd refused. "I didn't raise you to buy my love," she'd said. "And I won't take money I know how you earn." It was the only fight he'd ever lost. So he'd respected her wishes. He'd stayed away, visited twice a year on neutral ground, kept his world far from hers. He'd even hidden Leo from her for the first 5 years of the boy's life, terrified that connection would make her a target. But she'd been targeted anyway, by some nobody with a manager's badge and an ego. Matteo's phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. Initial report coming together.
You need to see something.
A file appeared, a news article from 8 months ago. The headline read, "Restaurant Regalia under new management, corporate restructuring promises, efficiency improvements." Matteo's eyes narrowed. Corporate restructuring usually meant gutting staff, cutting corners, maximizing profit. It meant people like Derek got promoted for cruelty disguised as efficiency. Another text. Regalia is owned by Meridian Hospitality Group. 6 restaurants, all acquired in the last 2 years. CEO is Marcus Hale.
Connected to.
The next message made Matteo's blood run cold. Novak Real Estate Development. Boss, these are the people trying to push into our territory in the East End. Matteo sat back slowly. The Novak Group. He'd heard whispers about them, developers with political connections and a reputation for aggressive expansion. They'd been buying up properties, forcing out tenants, rebuilding luxury high-rises where affordable housing used to stand. They'd been careful to avoid direct conflict with the DeLuca family's interests.
Smart.
But if they owned Regalia, if they'd enabled Derek Garrison, this wasn't just about one piece of shit slapping an old woman anymore. This was about a larger machine that crushed people like his mother to squeeze out profit margins. Matteo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You shouldn't have touched her," he whispered to the empty room. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 6 months, his attorney, Thomas Weaver, who specialized in making problems disappear legally.
Thomas.
"It's Matteo. I need you to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks." "What's this about?" "I'm coming out of retirement," Matteo said simply. "And I'm going to war." He hung up before Thomas could respond. Outside his study window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold.
The storm was gathering.
And Derek Garrison was about to learn that some old women have sons who loved them enough to burn the world down. Day 3 to 6:47 a.m. Tony Numbers Ricci had been Vincent's information specialist for a decade. He could find anything on anyone: bank records, phone logs, affairs, addictions, skeletons buried so deep most people forgot they existed. But he'd never seen Vincent this intense. "Talk to me," Vincent said, entering the surveillance apartment they'd set up across from Derek Garrison's condo building. Tony gestured to 3 monitors displaying Derek's entire digital footprint. "Our boy Derek is living way above his means. Assistant manager salary is $52,000 a year. But look," he pulled up bank statements. "He's spending like he makes 3 times that. Designer clothes, bottle service at clubs, lease on a BMW he can't afford. Where's the money coming from?" "That's the interesting part." Tony opened another file. "He's got 2 separate income streams. One from Regalia, official. The other from something called MHG Consulting Services, that's a shell company owned by Meridian Hospitality Group." Vincent leaned closer. "What's he consulting on?" "Performance optimization." Tony made air quotes. Translation: he's the hatchet man. Meridian sends him into their restaurants to cut staff, reduce costs, make the numbers look good for investors. He gets bonuses for every employee he forces out. "So my mother was a bonus," Vincent murmured, disgust dripping from his words. "Gets worse." Tony pulled up employee records. Regalia had 32 staff members 2 years ago.
Now, 18.
Derek's been systematically pushing out anyone over 50, anyone with health issues, anyone who might cost too much in benefits. Vincent's jaw tightened. What else? Health inspection reports. Tony opened a PDF. Regalia should have been shut down 4 months ago. Rat droppings in the storage area, expired food, broken refrigeration. Somehow they passed with flying colors. Bribery? Inspector's name is Bill Kozlowski. He's failed 6 other restaurants in the same period but keeps passing Regalia. I'm pulling his financials now, but I'd bet my left kidney there's a paper trail. Vincent nodded slowly. The boss wants everything. Keep digging. Day 3 to 2:15 p.m., Restaurant Regalia back in trance. Sophia Chin had worked at Regalia for 6 years. She'd watched Derek Garrison's rise from server to assistant manager with growing horror. The man was a cancer, and everyone knew it. So when a well-dressed stranger approached her during her smoke break, offering $500 just to talk, she was suspicious. "Who are you?" she asked, hand on her pepper spray. "Someone who wants Derek to face consequences." The man, Vincent, though he didn't introduce himself, placed 5 crisp $100 bills on the dumpster between them. "I'm not a cop. I'm not a reporter. I'm just someone collecting information." Sophia stared at the money. $500 would cover her daughter's medication for 2 months. "What do you want to know?" "Everything Derek doesn't want people to know." Sophia took the money and started talking. 20 minutes later, Vincent had a list of horrors. Derek had forced a pregnant waitress to work a double shift, causing her to miscarry. He'd stolen tips from the shared pool. He'd sexually harassed 3 female staff members who were too afraid of losing their jobs to report him. He'd falsified inventory reports to cover his own theft. "Why hasn't anyone reported this?" Vincent asked. "To who?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "The owner? Meridian Corporate? They don't care. Derek makes the money. That's all that matters." She paused. "But Rosa, what he did to Rosa was different.
We all saw it.
Some of us recorded it. That video spreading online? That wasn't an accident. We wanted it out there." Vincent nodded slowly. If someone were to help remove Derek, hypothetically, would the staff cooperate? Sophia met his eyes. "Every single one of us." Day 4 to 9:30 a.m., Mateo's estate. Vincent spread the files across Mateo's desk like a dealer laying out cards. Bank fraud, health code violations, bribery, harassment,
Theft.
Derek Garrison is a mid-level criminal with a manager's badge, Vincent summarized. But he's small-time. The real story is Meridian Hospitality Group. He pulled up a corporate structure chart. Meridian is a subsidiary of Novak Real Estate Development. Marcus Hale runs Meridian, but he answers to the Novak brothers, Dmitry and Alexei. Mateo's eyes darkened. "I know those names." "You should." The Novaks have been quietly buying properties across the city for 3 years. They acquire old businesses, force out the staff, demolish the buildings, and put up luxury condos. Vincent pointed to a map. "Guess what's scheduled for demolition in 6 months? Regalia. And the entire block. 42 families displaced. 3 businesses closed. All to build Novak luxury residences, starting price, $2 million per unit." Mateo stood and walked to his window, hands clasped behind his back. So, Derek wasn't just being cruel. He was doing his job. Make the restaurant fail, create justification for closure, clear the property.
Exactly.
Your mother was just collateral damage in a multi-million-dollar real estate scheme. "Then we're not just taking down Derek," Mateo said quietly. "We're taking down the entire operation." Vincent smiled grimly. "I was hoping you'd say that. Schedule a meeting with Thomas Weaver. I want legal angles covered. Then find me someone on the inside at Novak, secretary, accountant, janitor, I don't care. Someone who'll talk." "Already on it." Mateo turned back to the files, his mind calculating. Derek was the symptom. Meridian was the disease. But Novak? Novak was the cancer. And Matteo DeLuca had just decided to become the surgeon. "One more thing," he said softly. "How's my mother?" Vincent hesitated.
She
She hasn't left her apartment in 2 days, boss. Mateo's hands curled into fists. Then it's time I paid her a visit. Day 4 to 10:15 a.m., St. Anthony's Church. Rosa knelt in the third pew from the front, her rosary beads clicking softly between her fingers. The bruise on her cheek had faded from purple to a sickly yellow-green, but it still hurt to touch. Her wrist was wrapped in an elastic bandage she'd found in her bathroom cabinet. Hail Mary, full of grace. She came to St. Anthony's every Thursday morning. Had for 20 years. Father Miguel knew her by name, knew she lit a candle for her late husband every week, knew she prayed for her son, even though she never spoke his name aloud in this holy place. Some prayers were too complicated for words. The church was empty except for old Mrs. Chun lighting candles at the altar. Rosa liked it this way, quiet, peaceful, far from the chaos of the world outside. Here, she could pretend things were simple. But even here, she couldn't escape the whispers. Her phone had been ringing constantly. Former coworkers checking on her. Strangers who'd seen the video online offering support. Lawyers offering to take her case for free. Reporters wanting interviews. She'd turned the phone off yesterday. She didn't want attention. She wanted to disappear. Pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Rosa.
The voice made her jump. She turned to find Father Miguel standing in the aisle, his kind face creased with concern. I saw the video, he said softly, sliding into the pew beside her. The whole city has seen it. Rosa's fingers tightened on the rosary. I don't want to talk about it, Father. I'm not here to make you talk. I'm here to remind you that you did nothing wrong. That man's violence is his sin, not yours. Tears stung her eyes. I broke the glass. I was clumsy. You are human. Humans make mistakes. That doesn't give anyone the right to strike you, he paused. Have you reported it to the police? Rosa shook her head. What good would it do? I quit. It's over.
Rosa.
Please, Father. I just want peace. Father Miguel studied her for a long moment, then nodded.
Peace is a gift.
But sometimes we must fight for it first. He squeezed her hand and left her alone with her prayers. Day 4 to 3:45 p.m., Rosa's apartment. Rosa was heating soup when she heard the knock. 3 firm raps. Not aggressive, but not casual either. She froze, suddenly aware of how alone she was, how vulnerable. The video had made her famous. What if someone had found her address? What if Derek had sent someone to?
Mama.
It's me. The breath left her lungs in a rush. Mateo. She hurried to the door, hand trembling as she unlocked it. Her son stood in the hallway, tall and imposing in a dark suit, 2 men in equally dark suits flanking him like shadows. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. I know, Mateo nodded to his men, who retreated down the hallway. Then he stepped inside, and Rosa closed the door quickly behind him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Rosa saw the boy she'd raised, the one who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd defended smaller kids from bullies, who'd promised to take care of her someday. But she also saw the man he'd become. Hard, dangerous, powerful. Then Mateo's eyes found the bruise on her face, and something terrible flickered across his expression.
Chi ha fatto questo? He whispered.
Who did this? It's nothing. Nothing. His voice rose slightly before he controlled it. Mama, the whole world has seen what that bastardo did to you. Language, Rosa said automatically, then immediately felt foolish. Her son ran an empire built on violence, and she was worried about his language. Mateo moved closer, his hand hovering near her cheek, but not quite touching, as if afraid he might hurt her further. I know who he is. Derek Garrison. I know where he lives, where he works, what he eats for breakfast. Say the word and he disappears. Tonight.
No trace.
No, Rosa grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong.
Mateo, no.
I didn't raise you to become a murderer. You didn't raise me to let people hurt you either. And what happens after? Rosa's voice shook. He disappears, and then what? Police investigate. They find connections. They find you. They find Leo. Everything you've built to keep him safe, gone. Because of me. Mateo's jaw clenched. He can't just walk away from this. I'm not asking him to walk away. Rosa led him to the small kitchen table, the same table where she'd bandaged his scraped knees as a boy. I'm asking you to make him face justice the right way. The legal way. Make him hurt without spilling blood. Can you do that?
Mana.
Promise me, Mateo. No blood.
No dos appearances.
No bodies in the river. Her eyes filled with tears. I've lived my whole life afraid of the knock on the door, the phone call telling me you're dead or arrested. Don't make me live with knowing you killed someone because of me. Mateo stared at his mother, this tiny, fierce woman who'd survived poverty, abuse, loss, and now humiliation, yet still had the strength to demand mercy for her enemies. He deserves to suffer, Mateo said quietly. Then make him suffer without destroying yourself in the process. Rosa squeezed his hand. Promise me. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Mateo nodded. I promise. No blood. Rosa exhaled in relief. But as Mateo left her apartment 20 minutes later, his mind was already working. He'd promised no blood. He hadn't promised no suffering. Derek Garrison wanted to destroy people?
Fine.
Mateo would show him what real destruction looked like. Day 5 to 9:22 a.m., Regalia restaurant manager's office. Derek Garrison stared at his phone, watching the view count climb. 3 million. The video had 3 million views now. His face was everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, even the local news had picked it up. Assistant manager caught on video assaulting elderly waitress. His stomach churned. The comment sections were vicious. People were doxing him, posting his address, his social media profiles, even his dating app photos. Someone had found his college DUI. Another had screenshotted texts where he'd called his ex-girlfriend a string of obscenities. His life was being dissected in real time. But worse than the public humiliation was the phone call he'd received this morning from Marcus Hale, CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group.
Fix this. Now.
Or you're done. Derek's hands shook as he scrolled through the comments. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. A post from @Justice for Rosa. Does anyone know Rosa's last name? We should start a GoFundMe for her. This woman deserves justice. Top reply. I found her.
Rosa Moretti.
She lives in the Riverside district. Someone should check on her. Derek's mind raced. If people found her, interviewed her, got her side of the story on camera. If she hired a lawyer, filed charges. He needed to control this narrative. Fast. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd been given 6 months ago. A problem solver. Meridian kept on retainer for situations like this. Detective Paulson? It's Derek Garrison. I need your help. Day 5 to 2:47 p.m. Rosa's apartment. The knock on Rosa's door was different this time.
Loud.
Authoritative. The knock of people who expected doors to open. Mrs. Moretti? This is the police. We need to speak with you. Rosa's heart hammered. She smoothed her dress and opened the door to find 2 officers, one older with a thick mustache, one younger with cold eyes. Their badges identified them as Detective Frank Paulson and Officer James Reed. Mrs. Moretti? Paulson's voice was friendly, but his eyes weren't. We need to ask you some questions about an incident at Restaurant Regalia. Of course, Rosa stepped aside. Please come in. They didn't sit when she offered. Instead, they stood in her small living room like occupying soldiers, taking up space, making her feel small in her own home. We received a complaint this morning, Paulson said, pulling out a notepad. From Derek Garrison. He claims that on the evening of the incident, you became verbally abusive toward him, and when he tried to calm you down, you assaulted him.
Rosa blinked.
I what? He says you struck him first. That he was defending himself when he pushed you away. The slap you received was accidental. That's not true. Rosa's voice rose. I dropped a glass. He came over and hit me in front of 40 people. Mr. Garrison has witnesses who say you were aggressive. That you've been causing problems at work for weeks. Paulson's tone was casual, conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. He's filed a formal complaint for assault. Rosa felt the room tilt. There's a video. Everyone saw what happened. Videos can be misleading, Officer Reed said, speaking for the first time. His voice was flat, mechanical. They don't show what happened before. What provoked the situation? I didn't provoke anything. Paulson held up a hand. Mrs. Moretti, nobody wants to press charges here. Mr. Garrison is willing to drop his complaint if you agree to sign a statement saying the incident was a mutual altercation that got out of hand. You both walk away. Clean slate. Rosa stared at them. You want me to lie? We want you to end this before it gets worse. Paulson's friendly mask slipped slightly. You're what, 68? 70? You really want to spend your retirement in court battles? Legal fees? Stress. I want justice. Justice. Reed laughed coldly. Lady, you attacked your boss at work. You're lucky he's being generous. I didn't attack anyone. Rosa's hands trembled. Why are you doing this? Did he pay you? Paulson's expression hardened. Be very careful with accusations like that, Mrs. Moretti. Making false statements against police officers is a crime. He pulled out a document and placed it on her coffee table. This is a withdrawal of any potential complaints you might file against Mr. Garrison. Sign it and this all goes away. Refuse, and we'll have no choice but to proceed with his complaint against you. Assault charges. You could face jail time. Rosa looked at the paper, her vision blurring with tears of rage and helplessness. I need time to think. You have 24 hours, Paulson said. After that, we file charges. Your choice. They left without another word, their heavy footsteps echoing down the stairwell. Rosa sank onto her couch, staring at the document like it was a coiled snake. They were trying to silence her, to make her complicit in her own humiliation. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't sign anything. Help is coming. Rosa's hands shook as she typed back. Who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who won't let them get away with this. Day 5 to 5:15 p.m. Across the street. Vincent lowered his camera, having photographed both officers through Rosa's window. He'd recorded their entire visit with a parabolic microphone pointed at her apartment. He sent the file to Matteo with a single message. They just made their first mistake. Matteo's response was instant. Good. Now we know who's dirty. Add them to the list. Vincent smiled grimly. Derek Garrison had just escalated from a personal problem to a criminal conspiracy. And Matteo DeLuca was very, very good at dismantling conspiracies. Day 5 to 7:30 p.m. Restaurant Regalia. The reservation was made under the name Michael Torres, a wealthy real estate investor from Miami, according to the background Vincent had fabricated. When the man arrived at Regalia's entrance, Derek Garrison nearly tripped over himself, rushing to greet him. Matteo DeLuca wore a different face tonight. Designer suit, Rolex, perfectly styled hair with temporary gray at the temples to add 10 years. Colored contacts turned his dark brown eyes to hazel. A slight limp in his walk, suggesting old money and older injuries. He even spoke differently, his English flawless but touched with a faint Cuban accent. Mr. Torres. Derek's smile was so wide it looked painful. Welcome to Regalia. We're honored to have you. Matteo smiled blandly. Your restaurant came highly recommended. I'm in town scouting investment opportunities. Derek's eyes gleamed. Investment opportunities. Magic words. Please, right this way. We've prepared our best table for you. As they walked through the dining room, Matteo's trained eye caught everything. Half the tables were empty despite it being prime dinner hours. The remaining staff looked exhausted, their movements mechanical. The decor was elegant but worn, expensive once, neglected now. A dying business being bled dry from the inside. Derek led him to a corner booth with a view of the entire restaurant. Our sommelier will be right with you. In the meantime, may I suggest? I'll have the sommelier's choice, Matteo said dismissively. And I'd like to speak with management about the business. I understand you're the assistant manager? Derek puffed up like a peacock. That's correct. I essentially run the day-to-day operations here. Impressive for someone so young. Matteo gestured to the empty seat. Join me for a moment. I'd love to hear about your operational philosophy. Derek slid into the booth, barely able to contain his excitement. This was his chance. Impress the rich investor, maybe get recommended to Meridian's corporate office, maybe even get promoted to manager. Well, Mr. Torres, I believe in efficiency above all else, Derek began, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality. When I started here, this restaurant was drowning in overhead. Too many staff, too many unnecessary expenses. So you cut them, Matteo said neutrally. Streamlined, Derek corrected smoothly. We reduced staff by 40% while maintaining service quality. It's about doing more with less, you know? Getting rid of the dead weight. Dead weight, Matteo sipped the wine that had been poured. Like elderly employees? Derek hesitated for a fraction of a second. Like inefficient employees. Age doesn't matter. Productivity does. Of course, Matteo leaned back. I saw something about this restaurant online recently. A viral video? Derek's smile froze. An unfortunate misunderstanding. An employee who couldn't handle the pressure of professional service. The woman who was slapped. Who claimed she was slapped. Derek corrected, his voice tight. The investigation is ongoing, but between you and me, she was combative, unreliable. We'd been documenting her performance issues for months. Matteo took another sip of wine to hide the rage boiling in his chest. So, the video was taken out of context. Completely. Social media loves a victim story, you know? Truth doesn't matter anymore. Derek was gaining confidence again. But we're handling it. The employee has been encouraged to reconsider her version of events. Encouraged, Matteo's voice was soft. Dangerous.
How?
Derek caught himself, realizing he'd said too much. Through proper legal channels, of course. Before Matteo could respond, a server approached, a young woman with tired eyes and a forced smile. She set down the appetizer, without making eye contact. Thank you, Maria, Derek said with exaggerated warmth. Then, as she turned to leave, he added just loud enough for her to hear. Try to smile more. Customers like happy servers. Maria's shoulders tensed, but she nodded and hurried away. Matteo watched the interaction, adding it to the growing list of Derek's cruelties. You run a tight ship, Matteo observed. Someone has to. Derek leaned forward conspiratorially. This industry is full of people who think they deserve something just for showing up. My job is to remind them that employment is a privilege, not a right. And the ones who can't meet your standards, we help them find opportunities elsewhere. Derek's smile was predatory. One way or another. At that moment, the kitchen door swung open, and Matteo's heart stopped. Rosa walked out carrying a tray of dishes. She was back, working, despite everything. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Matteo saw the shock of recognition flash across her face before she quickly looked away, nearly stumbling. Another server, Sophia, caught her elbow, steadying her. Derek hadn't noticed. He was too busy explaining his management philosophy, oblivious to the fact that he was bragging about destroying lives to the son of one of his victims. There's Rosa now, Derek said casually, noticing her for the first time. She came crawling back this morning. Apologized. Begged for her job back, he smirked. I'm a forgiving man, Mr. Torres. I gave her a second chance. Matteo's hand tightened on his wine glass. How generous. I thought so, Derek stood. Excuse me a moment. I should check on the kitchen. The moment Derek walked away, Rosa appeared at the table, her hands shaking as she refilled his water glass.
Cosa stai facendo qui? She said in Italian.
What are you doing here? Hunting, Matteo replied in the same language. Why did you come back? I need the money. And I won't let him win. Her eyes were fierce. But you need to leave.
Now.
Before someone recognizes you. He doesn't know who I am, Mama. But I do. And I know that look in your eyes. She leaned closer, her voice urgent. Whatever you're planning, stop. This isn't worth your soul. Before Matteo could respond, Derek returned, and Rosa quickly moved away to serve another table. Mateo watched her go, his mother's words echoing in his mind. Not worth your soul. But as he looked at Derek Garrison preening and bragging about destroying people's lives, Mateo realized something. Some souls were worth trading for justice. Day 6 to 12:45 a.m., parking lot behind Regalia. Mateo sat in the back of his Mercedes, watching the last employees trickle out of the restaurant. Vincent was in the driver's seat, silent and patient. They'd been waiting for 40 minutes. Finally, 3 figures emerged together: Maria, Sophia, and a younger man in chef's whites. They stood in the pool of light from a flickering street lamp, speaking in hushed tones. "That's them," Vincent said. "The ones who've been most vocal about Derek on the staff message boards." Mateo opened his door. "Stay here. Boss. Stay here." Mateo walked across the parking lot, his footsteps echoing. The 3 employees turned, immediately tensing. The young chef, Carlos, according to Vincent's files, stepped forward protectively. "We don't want any trouble," Carlos said. "Neither do I." Mateo stopped a respectful distance away, hands visible. "I want to talk about Derek Garrison." "Are you a lawyer?" Maria asked hopefully.
No.
"I'm someone who wants him to face consequences." Mateo paused. "I was in the restaurant tonight. I watched him brag about destroying people's lives. I watched Rosa serve him while he smiled about forcing her back to work." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "You're the investor. Michael Torres." "That's not my real name." "Then who are you?" Mateo made a decision. These people had been brave enough to leak the video, brave enough to speak up. They deserved honesty. "I'm Rosa's son." The silence was absolute.
Jesus Christ, Carlos Breated.
Rosa said her son was. She never said what he did, but the way she talked, he stopped, understanding dawning. "You're connected." "I'm someone who solves problems," Mateo said carefully. "And Derek Garrison is a problem. But I need to know everything, not just what happened to my mother, but all of it. Every crime, every victim, every dirty secret." The 3 employees exchanged glances. "If we talk," Sophia said slowly, "what happens to us? We still need jobs. We still need to pay rent. You'll be protected. You have my word." "The word of a criminal?" Maria's voice shook. "How is that supposed to comfort us?" Mateo smiled sadly. "Because criminals keep their promises. We have to. It's how we survive. Break your word in my world, and you're dead." Derek breaks his word every day, and what happens? Nothing. He gets promoted. Another silence. Then Sophia pulled out her phone. "Okay, but not here. There are cameras." Day 6 to 1:30 a.m., all-night diner, 3 blocks away. They sat in a back booth, coffee cooling in chipped mugs. Sophia had brought a folder, actual paper documents she'd been secretly copying for months. "I knew something like this would happen eventually," she said, sliding the folder across to Mateo. "Derek's not just abusive, he's a thief." Mateo opened the folder. Payroll records, inventory sheets, credit card receipts. His eyes scanned quickly, his mind calculating. "He's been skimming," Carlos explained. "Takes food home for quality testing. That's thousands in prime cuts. Voids transactions after customers pay cash and pockets the difference. Charges personal expenses to the restaurant card. We estimated he's stolen at least 50,000 over the last year," Maria added. "But we couldn't prove it without access to the main computer." "I can get access," Mateo said quietly. Sophia continued. "He also forces us to clock out during slow periods, but makes us keep working. That's wage theft. Hundreds of hours stolen from the staff." "And the harassment?" Mateo asked. Maria's hand tightened on her coffee mug. He propositioned me 6 months ago. Said if I was friendly, he'd make sure I got the good shifts. When I refused, I started getting the worst stations, the smallest sections. He made Anna quit," Carlos said, his voice tight with anger. "You didn't meet her. She left before Rosa. She was pregnant, told Derek she needed to sit down for 10 minutes because of contractions. He said if she couldn't handle the job, she should leave. She worked through the pain for 3 more hours, then collapsed. Lost the baby that night. Mateo's expression was carved from stone. Where is Anna now? She moved back to El Salvador. Couldn't afford to stay after the medical bills. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. We took up a collection, but it wasn't enough. And no one reported this? Mateo's voice was dangerously soft. To who? Maria spread her hands. Derek's bosses at Meridian don't care. We tried calling their corporate hotline twice. Both times Derek was investigated, and both times he was cleared. One of the people who complained got fired 2 weeks later for performance issues. The system protects people like him, Carlos said bitterly. People like us? We're disposable. Mateo was quiet for a long moment, his mind working through strategies. What about the other employees? He asked. How many would testify if they had protection? All of them, Sophia said immediately. We're all scared, but we're more angry than scared now. Especially after Rosa. She's like everyone's grandmother, you know? She remembers birthdays, brings homemade cookies, asks about your kids. Seeing him hit her, her voice broke. That broke something in all of us. Mateo nodded slowly. Then here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make Derek Garrison pay for everything he's done. To my mother, to Anna, to all of you. But it's going to be legal.
Public. Permanent. How?
Maria asked. By doing what people like Derek never expect, Mateo smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd just spotted prey. By following the law. Every single rule. Every regulation. Every statute. He pulled out his phone and sent a text. 30 seconds later, Vincent entered the diner and set a briefcase on the table. Inside are burner phones, Mateo said. One for each of you. Tomorrow, you'll receive instructions. You're going to help me build a case so airtight that even Derek's corrupt friends can't save him. What about Rosa? Sophia asked. She came back to work. She's there right now, serving that bastard. My mother is stronger than all of us combined, Mateo said softly. She's also buying me time. Derek thinks he's won. That makes him careless. Carlos leaned forward. What do you need from us? Keep working. Keep records. Keep your phones recording whenever Derek speaks, Mateo stood. And most importantly, act normal. He can't know we're coming. As he walked toward the door, Maria called out. Mr. DeLuca? He turned. Rosa talks about you sometimes. She's proud of you. Even though she won't say what you do, Maria's voice was soft. Don't make her regret that pride. Mateo held her gaze. I won't. Outside, Vincent was waiting by the car. We have them, Mateo said simply. And Paulson? Reed? The dirty cops. Add them to the presentation. Mateo's smile was cold.
Everyone pay.
Day 7 to 10:15 a.m., Novak Real Estate Development Headquarters. The Novak building was all glass and steel, 40 stories of wealth and power rising above the city's skyline. Mateo had never been inside, but Vincent's intelligence had mapped every floor, every executive, every dirty secret hiding behind the polished facade. They weren't entering through the front door. Third basement level, Vincent said, navigating the service entrance in a stolen maintenance van. Building services. Nobody pays attention to janitors. Mateo wore coveralls with Peak Cleaning Services embroidered on the back. A fake ID badge hung from his neck. In his cart were industrial cleaners, mops, and a laptop hidden under a false bottom. They passed security without a second glance. Vincent had spent 2 days cultivating a source, a junior accountant named Patricia Chun who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times despite having the best performance reviews in her department. The reason? She'd refused to falsify expense reports. She was exactly the kind of disgruntled employee Mateo needed. They found her in a small conference room on the 23rd floor during her lunch break, eating a sad desk salad. When Mateo entered, she jumped. Who? Ms. Chun. Mateo closed the door behind him. I'm sorry for the intrusion. I'm here about the Meridian Hospitality acquisition and what Novak is really doing with those properties. Patricia's eyes widened. I don't know what you're talking about. You've been copying files for 6 months, Matteo sat across from her. Emails about fraudulent property assessments. Documents showing Novak bribing city councilors to approve demolitions. Records of displaced families who were promised relocation assistance that never came. How do you? Patricia stopped, her face pale. Who are you? Someone who can actually do something with the information you've been too afraid to use, Matteo leaned forward. You've been building a case, haven't you? Waiting for the right moment to expose them. Patricia's hands trembled. They'll destroy me. Dmitry Novak doesn't just fire people who cross him. He ruins them. Blacklists them from every company in the city. I have student loans, rent, a sick mother who needs. I know everything about you, Miss Chen. Which is why I know you're brave enough to do the right thing. Matteo pulled out a flash drive. Copy everything you have onto this. In return, I guarantee your protection and a job at a company that won't ask you to compromise your ethics. You can't guarantee that. Yes, I can. Matteo's voice was absolute. Because I'm Matteo DeLuca, and when I make a promise, it's kept. Patricia's eyes went wide. Oh my God. You're the DeLuca family.
Yes.
And right now, we have a common enemy. Matteo placed the flash drive on the table. Novak destroyed my mother's life to make a profit. How many others has he destroyed? Patricia stared at the flash drive for a long moment. Then, her hand shot out and grabbed it. Everything, she asked. Everything. Day 7 to 3:47 p.m., Matteo's estate. Vincent projected the files onto the large screen in Matteo's office. What they revealed was worse than either had imagined. Novak Real Estate wasn't just a development company. It was a criminal enterprise dressed in corporate clothing. Look at this. Vincent highlighted a section. Meridian Hospitality is one of 17 subsidiaries. All of them exist to acquire properties through forced sales. The pattern was clear. Novak would identify valuable property in gentrifying neighborhoods. They'd create or acquire a business on that property. A restaurant, a shop, a small apartment building. Then they'd deliberately run it into the ground through corrupt managers like Derek, manufacturing failures to justify closure and demolition. Here's the real estate council approval for the Regalia block, Vincent continued. Approved 3 weeks ago, before Derek even hit Rosa. They were always going to demolish it. The slap just accelerated the timeline. Matteo studied the documents. How many families are being displaced? From this project alone? 42 families, 173 people. 3 businesses closed. But look at this. Vincent pulled up a map. Regalia is just one of 9 properties Novak is planning to demolish this year. Total displacement? Over 800 people. Where do they go? Novak doesn't care. Their internal emails literally say, "Relocation is not our problem." Vincent's voice was tight with anger. They promised the city council they'd provide affordable housing alternatives. They lied. Every unit in the new building starts at $2 million each. Matteo was silent, his mind calculating. He'd built his empire on violence, yes, but there were rules. You didn't hurt civilians. You didn't target families. You didn't destroy entire communities for profit. The Novak brothers were doing exactly that, and they were doing it legally. There's more, Vincent said quietly. Look who's on their advisory board. Matteo's eyes scanned the list and stopped on one name. Police Captain Richard Morrison. The same man who oversaw Detective Paulson. They own the police, Matteo said. Not all of them, but enough. Morrison has been fast-tracking permits, suppressing complaints, making problems disappear. Vincent pulled up bank records. He's received $200,000 in consulting fees over the last 3 years. And the city council? 3 members are in Novak's pocket. Here, Vincent showed campaign contribution records. All legal donations, technically. But the timing matches perfectly with key votes on zoning changes. Matteo stood and walked to the window, his reflection dark against the glass. We're not just fighting Derek anymore, he said quietly. We're fighting the entire system that enabled him. Can we win? Vincent asked. Against corruption this deep? Through legal channels? Matteo turned back. Maybe not. But we can expose it. Make it so toxic that even their bot politicians can't protect them.
How?
Mateo's smile was sharp as a knife. By doing exactly what they're terrified of, shining a light on everything they've kept in the shadows. We're going to make Derek Garrison the first domino. And when he falls, the rest come crashing down. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Thomas? It's Mateo. Remember when you said you always wanted to take down a real estate empire? I have an early Christmas present for you. Day 7 to 9:30 p.m. Rosa's apartment. Rosa was sitting at her kitchen table, staring at the document Detective Paulson had left, when her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Moretti? This is Thomas Weaver. I'm an attorney, and I'd like to represent you pro bono in your case against Derek Garrison. Rosa's heart hammered. I don't understand. I can't afford. Pro bono means free, Mrs. Moretti. And I should tell you, I don't lose. Why would you help me? There was a pause. Because someone who cares about you asked me to. And because what happened to you is just the tip of a very large, very corrupt iceberg. Rosa closed her eyes. Mateo. I told him no blood, she whispered. And there won't be. Just justice. May I come see you tomorrow? Rosa looked at the document on her table, the lie they wanted her to sign. Yes, she said. Yes, please come. Day 8 to 12 p.m., Restaurant Regalia, private event. The invitation had been irresistible. Exclusive lunch event with potential investors. Meridian Hospitality Group presents Regalia's future. Derek had jumped at the chance to host. Marcus Hale himself would be attending, along with city council members, food critics, and several journalists. This was his opportunity to rehabilitate his image, to show everyone that the misunderstanding with Rosa was behind them. He'd even convinced Rosa to work the event. The optics were perfect. See, the old woman came back, everything's fine. We're one big happy family. What Derek didn't know was that every invitation had been carefully orchestrated by Thomas Weaver and sent to very specific people, investigative journalists from 3 major publications, a city council ethics investigator, representatives from the Department of Labor, and 2 FBI agents investigating real estate fraud. The restaurant was packed. White tablecloths, champagne flutes, the best menu Regalia could offer. Derek moved through the crowd in his best suit, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, desperately trying to appear confident. Rosa served quietly, her face neutral, her movements precise. She caught Mateo's eye once. He was seated at a corner table, back to his real appearance, dressed simply as a journalist. She gave him the slightest shake of her head. Please don't do this. He smiled sadly.
I have to.
At 12:30, Thomas Weaver stood and clinked his glass. The room fell silent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I'm Thomas Weaver, and I've been investigating Meridian Hospitality Group and its parent company, Novak Real Estate Development, for the past week. Derek's smile froze. Marcus Hale, seated at the head table, half rose from his chair. This is a private event, Hale began. Actually, it's a public event, Thomas interrupted smoothly. The invitations went to city officials and press. That makes it public record. Shall we begin? He nodded to Vincent, who dimmed the lights and activated a projector. The viral video played first, Rosa being slapped, stumbling, walking away with quiet dignity. Several people who'd seen it before still gasped. Seeing it on a large screen, in person, with Rosa herself standing in the room, made it visceral. This is what brought us here, Thomas said. But this is what you didn't see. The next video played, security footage from Regalia's back office, showing Derek pocketing cash from the register. Date stamped. Undeniable. Theft, Thomas narrated calmly. Approximately $53,000 over 14 months. Derek's face went white. That's not. I can explain. Please don't. Thomas clicked to the next slide. Health inspection reports. The official ones submitted to the city show perfect scores. These are the actual reports before they were altered. Rat droppings, expired food, broken refrigeration. A photograph appeared. Detective Paulson accepting an envelope from Derek in a parking lot. Bribery of a public official, Thomas's voice remained conversational. "We have 12 similar photographs, 3 recorded phone conversations, and bank records showing payments to Inspector William Kozlowski and Detective Frank Paulson." The room erupted. Journalists were typing frantically. City council members looked horrified that they'd been caught in the same room as this scandal. "But wait," Thomas said, "there's more. Because Derek Garrison isn't the disease. He's just a symptom." The next slide showed the Novak corporate structure. Meridian Hospitality Group is a front for property acquisition fraud. They buy struggling businesses, install managers like Derek to deliberately tank them, then use the failures to justify demolitions for luxury development. Financial records appeared on screen, the real ones Patricia had provided, showing fraudulent property assessments, bribed city officials, and displaced families who'd been promised help that never came.
Marcus Halle stood.
"This is defamation. Our lawyers will." "Your lawyers are already being served," Thomas said pleasantly. "The district attorney's office has copies of everything I'm showing today, as does the FBI, as does the Department of Labor, as does every major news outlet in the city." One of the journalists stood. "Mr. Hale, is it true that Novak planned to demolish Regalia regardless of its performance?" Another journalist. "What about the 800 families being displaced?" A third. "Are you aware that 3 city council members received illegal campaign contributions?" Hale pushed through the crowd toward the exit, but 2 people blocked his path, FBI agents, badges visible. "Mr. Hale, we'd like you to come with us for questioning." Derek tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Vincent casually stuck out a foot. Derek sprawled across the floor, and before he could rise, 2 NYPD officers, clean ones, not Paulson, were hauling him to his feet. "Derek Garrison, you're under arrest for assault, theft, bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud." As the handcuffs clicked, Derek's eyes found Rosa. She stood by the kitchen door, her expression unreadable. "You," he gasped. "You did this. You called them." "No," Rosa said quietly. "I just dropped a glass. Everything else? That was all you." The officers led Derek away. Marcus Hale followed in his own handcuffs. The event had transformed into chaos. Journalists shouting questions, city officials scrambling to distance themselves, staff members crying with relief. Thomas approached Rosa and placed a document in her hands. "What is this?" she asked. "The deed to this restaurant." Derek Garrison was forced to sell his shares to settle debts. Marcus Hale's assets are frozen. The property was going to be auctioned, but an anonymous buyer purchased it this morning. Thomas smiled. "That buyer has transferred ownership to you, free and clear. Regalia is yours, Mrs. Moretti." Rosa's hands trembled. "I don't understand. Who?" Her eyes found Matteo across the room. He was already walking toward the exit, melting into the crowd. "Wait." Rosa pushed through the people, but by the time she reached the door, he was gone. Only Vincent remained, leaning against a car. "He said to tell you," Vincent called out, "that respect is earned, not taken. And you've earned everything." Rosa stood in the doorway of her restaurant, and for the first time in days, she let herself cry. Day 9 to 11:47 p.m., rooftop of Regalia. Derek Garrison had been released on bail 6 hours ago. His lawyer, a public defender, since Meridian had cut him loose, had warned him to stay away from Regalia, to not contact anyone involved in the case. Derek had ignored that advice. He stood on the rooftop of the restaurant, hands gripping the railing, staring at the city lights below. His life was over. His bank accounts were frozen. His apartment lease was being terminated. His face was on every news channel, labeled the face of corporate corruption. But worse than all of that was the humiliation. He'd been so close to making it, so close to being someone who mattered. And that old woman had destroyed everything. Beautiful view. Derek spun around. A man stepped from the rooftop access door, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black. Even in the darkness, Derek could see the danger in his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" Derek demanded, though his voice shook. "This is private property." "Is it?" Matteo walked slowly toward him, hands in his pockets. I thought this building belonged to Rosa Moretti now. Which means you're trespassing. Something about the man's voice was familiar. Derek's mind raced, trying to place it, and then… You're the investor. Michael Torres. That's not my name. Matteo stopped a few feet away. My name is Matteo DeLuca. Rosa Moretti is my mother. The blood drained from Derek's face. DeLuca. He'd heard that name whispered in certain circles, always with fear. Stories of what happened to people who crossed the family. Bodies that were never found. Witnesses who suddenly forgot what they'd seen. I didn't know, Derek whispered. I swear I didn't know who she was. Would it have mattered? Matteo's voice was soft, conversational. If she'd been someone else's mother? Someone with no powerful son to protect her? Would you have treated her any differently? Derek backed toward the railing. Look, I made a mistake.
I'm sorry.
I'll apologize. I'll pay her back. You can't pay back dignity. Matteo took another step forward. You humiliated her in front of dozens of people. You made her feel small, worthless, disposable. You forced her to come back and serve you like a dog begging for scraps. Please, Do you know what I wanted to do when I saw that video? Matteo continued, his voice still eerily calm. I wanted to find you, drag you somewhere quiet, spend hours teaching you what real pain feels like. I have people who are very good at that. They can keep you alive for days while you beg for death. Derek's legs gave out. He slumped against the railing, tears streaming down his face. Please don't kill me. Please.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. But my mother asked me not to spill blood. Matteo crouched down to Derek's level. She asked me to do this the right way. The legal way.
So I did.
I gathered evidence. I built a case. I let the system work exactly as it's supposed to. Then why are you here? Matteo reached into his jacket. Derek flinched, but what emerged was just a folder. Because the legal system can only do so much, Matteo opened the folder, revealing documents. This is a confession. You're going to detail every crime you committed, not just against my mother, but against every employee you terrorized. Every dollar you stole. Every lie you told. I already confessed to the police. This is different. This is personal accountability. Matteo pulled out a pen. You're going to write a letter to Ana Cervantes, the woman who lost her baby because of you. You're going to apologize and explain how you'll be setting up a fund for her medical expenses, using every asset you have left. I don't have anything left. Then you'll work. You'll spend the next 10 years paying back every person you hurt. It's that or… Matteo gestured to the edge of the roof. I let nature take its course. Your choice. Derek grabbed the pen with shaking hands. Okay, I'll do it. Whatever you want. As Derek began writing, Matteo stood and walked to the edge, looking out over the city. Behind him, he heard Derek's pen scratching against paper, heard the man's pathetic sniffling. It would be so easy. One push. Derek was already against the railing. An accident.
A suicide.
No one would question it. Matteo's hands curled into fists. Matteo. He turned. Rosa stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the stairwell light. She must have been downstairs, must have seen Derek break in, must have known what Matteo would do. She walked across the rooftop, her steps slow but steady, until she stood beside her son. You kept your promise, she said softly. No blood. He deserves worse than this. Of course he does. Rosa looked at Derek, who was still writing, still crying. But what he deserves and what we become by giving it to him are two different things. Matteo's jaw clenched. He hurt you. And now he's been hurt back. His life is ruined. His reputation destroyed. He'll spend years paying for what he did. Rosa took Matteo's hand. The same hand she'd held when he was a boy. The same hand that had held guns and signed death warrants. That's enough, my son. That's justice. It doesn't feel like enough. Because you love me. And love makes us want to protect the people we care about, even if it means destroying ourselves in the process. She squeezed his hand. But I'm asking you to stop. Not for him. For you. For Leo. For the man you could still become. Matteo looked at his mother, this tiny, fierce woman who'd survived everything life had thrown at her and still chose mercy over vengeance. I wanted to kill him, Matteo admitted quietly. I know, Rosa reached up and touched his face. But you didn't. That's what matters. Derek finished writing and held up the papers with trembling hands. I'm done. I wrote everything. Can I go now? Please. Matteo took the confession, scanned it quickly, then nodded. Get out. If I ever see you near my mother again, mercy won't be an option. Derek scrambled to his feet and ran for the stairs, nearly falling twice in his panic. As his footsteps faded, Rosa leaned against her son. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For loving me enough to want revenge. And for loving me enough to choose justice instead. They stood together on the rooftop, mother and son, while the city breathed below them. And for the first time in years, Matteo De Luca felt something close to peace. Day 10 to 10 a.m., Restaurant Regalia grand reopening. The morning sun poured through Regalia's windows, painting everything in shades of gold. Rosa stood in the center of the dining room, surrounded by controlled chaos. Staff arranging flowers, Carlos directing the kitchen team, Sophia adjusting table settings with meticulous care. But everything was different now. The worn carpet had been replaced. Fresh paint brightened the walls. New equipment hummed in the kitchen. And most importantly, the faces around her were smiling, genuinely smiling, not the forced expressions of people afraid for their jobs.
Nonna Rosa.
Maria called from the entrance. The first customers are lining up outside. Rosa's heart skipped. In the 10 days since Derek's arrest, word had spread about what happened. The viral video had transformed from a symbol of cruelty into a story of justice. People wanted to support her, to be part of something good. But Rosa had been terrified they wouldn't come. Should we open the doors? Sophia asked. Rosa smoothed her new apron, deep blue with regalia, embroidered in gold thread. Not a uniform chosen by corporate managers, but one she'd picked herself. She took a deep breath.
Yes.
Let them in. The doors opened, and customers flooded in, not just curious onlookers, but families, elderly couples, young professionals, all of them wanting to be part of Rosa's story. Within 20 minutes, every table was full. Within an hour, there was a waiting list. Rosa moved through the dining room, greeting guests personally, her cheek no longer bruised, her wrist finally healed. She saw their faces light up when she approached, heard their words of encouragement. We're so proud of you, Mrs. Moretti. You're an inspiration. Thank you for not giving up. Each comment made her eyes sting with grateful tears. 11:30 a.m., the kitchen. Carlos pulled Rosa aside between orders. Nana, we need to talk about the menu. These recipes. He gestured to the old Meridian corporate menu.
They're not you.
They're not us. Rosa looked at the laminated pages, generic Italian-American food designed by consultants who'd never set foot in a real Italian kitchen. What do you suggest? She asked. Carlos grinned. Your recipes. The ones you used to make for staff meal. Real food. Your mother's pasta sauce. Your grandmother's meatballs. Food with soul.
Rosa hesitated.
That's not fancy enough. Fancy doesn't matter, Maria interrupted, joining them. Heart matters. People aren't coming here for fancy.
They're coming for you.
Rosa looked around her kitchen, at the staff who'd stood by her, who'd risked their jobs to expose the truth, who now looked at her with hope instead of fear. Okay, she said softly. We'll do it your way. Our way. The kitchen erupted in cheers. 2:47 p.m., outside Regalia. Across the street, in a black Mercedes with tinted windows, Matteo watched the celebration through binoculars. Vincent sat in the driver's seat, patient as always. She's happy, Vincent observed. She is. Matteo lowered the binoculars, a small smile on his face. The Novak brothers are being indicted next week. Paulson and Reed lost their badges. Marcus Hale cut a deal. He's testifying against everyone. Vincent glanced at his boss. You took down an entire corruption network without firing a single shot. My mother's way, Matteo said quietly. Think you'll do it again? Solve problems without violence. Matteo considered the question. For 20 years, he built his empire on fear and force. It was efficient, effective. But watching his mother transform her pain into something beautiful, a restaurant where people were treated with dignity, where families could afford to eat, where staff earned living wages, he realized violence wasn't the only form of power. Maybe, he said finally. For her? Maybe I'll try. His phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Dad, can I visit Nana this weekend?
I miss her.
Matteo smiled. Ask your mother. If she says yes, I'll take you myself. 3 dots appeared. Then really? You never take me to the city. Things change, Matteo typed back. People change. He looked up to see Rosa standing in Regalia's doorway, greeting an elderly couple with the warmth that was her trademark. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. She couldn't possibly see him through the tinted windows, but somehow she knew he was there. She placed her hand over her heart, then pointed at him. I love you, the gesture said. And I'm proud of you. Matteo repeated the gesture, hoping she understood. Rosa smiled, then turned back to her customers, back to her new life. We should go, Vincent said. You have a meeting at 3. 1 more minute. Matteo watched as a young family entered Regalia, parents with 2 small children. Rosa knelt down to speak with the kids, probably asking their names, probably sneaking them cookies from her apron pocket. The parents laughed, relaxed, happy to be somewhere safe. This was his mother's legacy. Not wealth or power or fear. Just kindness. Just dignity. Just proof that one person could make a difference if they refused to break. Okay, Matteo said finally. Let's go. As the Mercedes pulled away, Vincent asked, What about Derek? What about him? Last I heard, he's working at a car wash. Garnished wages going to Ana Cervantes' fund. Good, Matteo's voice was flat. Let him spend the rest of his life remembering what it's like to be powerless. And the restaurant? You going to tell Rosa you bought it for her? She doesn't need to know. Boss, she probably already knows. Matteo smiled. Then she knows I finally learned something she spent 20 years trying to teach me. What's that? That respect isn't taken. It's earned. Matteo looked out the window as the city blurred past. She earned hers by never breaking. I earned mine by finally listening. 6 p.m. Regalia, closing time. The last customers left with full bellies and happy faces. The staff gathered around the bar, exhausted but triumphant. Sophia popped a bottle of cheap champagne, all they could afford, and poured plastic cups for everyone. To Rosa, Carlos raised his cup. For showing us that good people can win. To Rosa, everyone echoed. Rosa stood among them, these people who'd become her family, and felt something she hadn't felt in years.
Hope.
Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Her respect is earned. Not taken.
M.
She smiled through tears and typed back. Come visit soon. There's someone I want you to meet.
Who?
The man you're becoming. I think I'd like him. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I love you, Mama. I love you too, my son. Rosa put her phone away and raised her plastic cup of champagne.
To second chances, she said.
And to proving that even when the world tries to break you, grace and dignity will always win. The glasses clinked together, a sound like bells, like promises, like the future opening up before them all. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one, illuminating the darkness, proving that even the smallest light could push back against the shadows. And inside Regalia, Rosa Moretti, elderly waitress, survivor, and now owner, stood surrounded by love and looked toward tomorrow. The slap had started everything, but kindness would be how it was remembered.